I never worried about the wind until I put a smartphone in my hand. I put a smartphone in my hand and I started hunting out in the Midwest where wind's huge, because it blows the same way most of the time. And I started trying to do that here, and it didn't help me any. So I'm like, you know what? I don't care what the wind's blowing. A big, huge plus for me of not hanging set stands is because I can hang a stand based off of which way the wind's blowing.
A little bit more context here, by the way. I think we already mentioned it, but just to kind of go over it a little bit more, you're from Western North Carolina,
Western
correct?
North Carolina, yeah.
Mountains.
Yeah, mountains.
Nasty.
Mountains.
Yeah.
We learned that this week.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sore right now, I'm not going to lie to you.
It ain't easy. And the main reason why I think that I'm not a tactics guy, because tactics can go completely out the window here, just because of the pure size. It's kind of like preseason scouting for elk in Colorado. I mean, what tactics do you know that you really need to know other than the wind? Where do the elk or where do the deer like to frequent? What you wind, and I think that's the most important things here. If you don't have that, then you're gonna struggle.
And that brings up a great point, talking about the wind, because we've learned the wind loves to shift around here, depending on what kind of side slope you're on, or if you're
It's
on
just
top,
a circle, man.
or like if the ridge 400 yards across from you is higher than you, and kind of what's happening with it eddying or whatever. How do you focus on the wind out here, like early season versus like getting to the rut, leaves are falling off, and kind of maybe like later in the season? Because I feel like it was a lot more challenging than we thought it would be. We thought it would be a little bit more thermal based, but like the wind really has never stopped, kind of all over the place. So
this is the home of the whiskey wind. We'll just say that. So you're more when you get into steep mountains like this in the western part of North Carolina, Western Virginia is the same way. Eastern, southeastern Kentucky, we're all in that in the Blue Ridge Mountains here. There's really no game plan that you can really have all the time, because if it says north on your phone, you step out of your truck, it's blowing south. You get to where you're walking in, it's blowing from the east. When you get to where you're hunting, it's blowing from the west. So it's more or less all you do is just put the stand on your back and go hunting. And that's where I have become successful, is because I never worried about the wind until I put a smartphone in my hand. I put a smartphone in my hand and I started hunting out in the Midwest where wind's huge, because it blows the same way most of the time. And I started trying to do that here, and it didn't help me any. So I'm like, you know what? I don't care what the wind's blowing. A big, huge plus for me of not hanging set stands is because I can hang a stand based off of which way the wind's blowing. So I put the stand on my back. I mean, I have a tree diaper. I'll carry a saddle once in a blue moon, but honestly, like, I just go in and just figure out what the wind's going to be. And I don't hunt where the deer are. I hunt where they're supposed to be, or because I think a big buck finds something first. And I know that I'm kind of going off topic here, but I think a big buck finds where they want to be first. And then as soon as all the other deer moves in, he shifts and tries to find somewhere else. So if I go there and there's a ton of sign, I try to hunt off of that. I don't hunt directly on all that sign. Sometimes I will, depending on what time of year it is. But I mean, most first white oaks are falling. Sure, maybe I might. But when you get kind of later September, October, I try to stay one step ahead. I'm 99% of the time one step behind, because how many times have you walked in the woods and you say, God, if I'd have been here a week ago, there wouldn't be a deer alive in here, But yeah, man, just following that has helped.
That's a good point with the wind, because first off, we're going to get some YouTube comments saying that makes zero sense and you got to hunt with the wind. YouTube people are interesting. Different audience from our audio listeners, guys.
Sure.
Love a lot of you guys, but some of y'all put some crazy comments out there. And,
put your Crispies on, come walk with me, and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Well, and some of the other mountain guys that we've had on in the past, especially since we started putting stuff on YouTube. Again, audio never really came up, but YouTube, because it's so easy to leave comments on it. A lot of guys that don't hunt in the mountains are like, well, you have to hunt with the wind. That makes zero sense. Like, you're never going to kill deer without the wind. But then you see these guys' walls, and they're killing hammers in the mountains on public land or on private land. Doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. And like, wind is like a secondary factor just because of it's not stable. It's not consistent necessarily. Correct. On the direction that it's coming in from. And that's something I think it's hard for people to understand, specifically if you live in a lot more flat, gentle environment, which, I mean, we've hunted river bottoms before where it swirled a lot. but it was kind of predictable based off like the habitat.
How it was going to swirl.
It was like
it's like, hey, it's going to hit this tree line and it's going to roll and it's going to do this or that.
Yeah.
And you can
You have
predict
to
it.
pay more attention to thermals here.
For sure. Well, we thought so, and we did that. But then the wind was like, no, not today, sucker. We're blowing this way.
I'm just going to take them that way. I mean, here, if you can focus on thermals are going to fall, thermals are going to rise. You can. It's a little bit easier whenever you do go in the woods to say, okay, I need to be below the sign now. I need to be above the sign this time of day. That helps, but still, I mean, there are pockets in Western North Carolina where you can get to a little bit more flat land. Some of the public pieces here that you can get up on top of the mountain. There's some flats and open, pretty places and things, and the wind is a little bit more predictable. It'd be kind of like hunting a little bit more eastern North Carolina or eastern Virginia. It's a little bit, but I know where you were hunting. There's no predictability. That's why I don't bow hunt it early much. I mean, I know some places that I can bow hunt there that I could probably be successful.
And, I wanted to get back to the wind thing too, because it's a really interesting topic. When it comes to the wind being inconsistent, it's like if you go to the Midwest or even really where we're from in Alabama, you have pretty defined bedding areas, whether it be a pine thicket where we're from or a CRP patch in Iowa or something. That's where they're going to be. So a lot of it, I guess, is trying to not blow your wind towards those known bedding areas, food sources, or trails. Out here, I feel like that is all very unpredictable.
Yeah.
And so is the wind. So it's like, just go hunt. Like, you don't know where he's coming
Everything is a
from.
bedding area here. Everything is a bedding area. It don't matter if there's laurel or if it's big, wide open timber.
We've been finding beds in like big beds everywhere, open timber, in sapling thickets, on ridge points, on, around big rocks, around, on benches, like everywhere.
Logging roads.
Like everywhere you would walk, you could find a bed. If you looked hard enough, you would find a bed half the size of this table. And you're like, well, this kind of, it's cool, but I'm like, it's everywhere.
It sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, we're like back home, it's like, I know that pine thicket, they're going to be in and around that pine thicket. They're not going to be right here in these wide open timber because there's enough hunting pressure, they're going to be in the pine thicket.
And they're going to be in the pine thicket,
Yeah.
so you can sneak up to the edge of it. They can't see you.
Yeah, for sure.
But like out here, so many beds we are finding too, and I'd love to get your take on this, specifically, association with the wind, but also like hunting. It seemed like a lot of these beds, there's a few that were in sapling thickets that like the deer didn't have a visual advantage. They could kind of see underneath it, but they can't see very far. But a lot of them were found on the side of these ridges where they can look downhill 150 yards or
It's
more.
early September. Imagine when the leaves are gone.
Exactly. And it's like, how do you get on a deer in the afternoons? And we talked to our buddy Zach White, who was on the podcast a little while ago for one of these outros, and he was like, after hunting up here for a year, he's like, I'd rather hunt mornings up here and walk in the dark than try to come in on an afternoon hunt, because you're walking up on these deer and they can see you from like so far away.
Hundreds of yards.
Yeah, and you're like,
And they can hear you too.
that too.
Oh, yeah.
And another thing about it, and this is where I kind of want to get to, talking about bedding versus food. Another aspect about it is what Zach was saying. I'm curious to get your take on this. A lot of these deer, especially some of the bucks, like they're not blowing at you. Like if they see you from distance, they're just getting up and like slipping off or holding tight until you walk by them. And back home, that happens every now and then, but a lot of times, like you're going to hear, like if they see you or definitely smell you, they're gone and they're blowing. Or like up here, it's like the first day we did a loop, we didn't hear a deer. I think we heard one deer blow at one point, but we were going through all these beds. I'm like, we have to be bumping deer, but they're just seeing us and hearing us, and they're just not blowing when they're leaving. Do you see that much?
So it's kind of 50-50. A big buck won't blow at you here much unless if you miss him with a bow like I did that one last year. I mean, he blew 143 times. But a lot of times you can walk right by them and they'll just slip right off the edge because they have a quick escape, right? And so they don't want you to know where they are sitting because you can see them. Most of the time, I think, and this is, just my opinion, if a buck can't see you and you scared him, it's when he's going to blow. If a buck can see you and he sees what you're doing, he can slip off and you'll never know he's there, right? And that's just been my experience here, because I don't know how many times, man, that I've been in the woods that, say I had a camera over across the ridge and I'm going there, boom, I see a whitetail, never heard nothing, never saw anything, and I'm like, I can see almost to my tree stand, but you can't see that little bitty motion going through the woods there, man. It's tough here. Like the area where you guys are hunting is so vast. Top third of the mountain is where they love, but there are some close places too that they love. Some really, really close spots